begin part 2 of the interview with Caitlin and Jeff. We'll start with this. Okay, what kind of animals inhabit Guam, and are there any dangerous ones?
The most common things that we hear about when we get here and they do like their briefings are the brown tree snake, which isn't a danger to the average person. It's usually babies and very elderly people because they are venomous, but it's not real strong. And so small dogs and babies you do have to be careful if you're leaving them unattended outside or even if the snake gets in the house. But that's really the only venomous thing on the island, I think.
So you've been on the island for 2 years. How many snakes have you seen?
One.
We've seen one at the house. I've seen them at work. Occasionally they'll be on the fence at the hospital just because that butts up against some jungle on the backside. So we've seen them on there, but not very often. I think I've seen 2 or 3 tops. Yeah.
So besides snakes, anything else?
Bears.
Spiders. We have, black widows.
Yeah.
Brown recluse. Hunter spiders.
There's chickens, which, funny enough, I forgot that they could actually fly because most of them in the States have their wings clipped, so you never see them actually flying. We got here and one flew over the fence and up into a tree, and it was a little surprising, but they're everywhere because other than cats and maybe dogs, the strays, there are no predators for them, so they just multiply continuously. And then there's hogs, which are a nuisance, so
Yes.
you can hunt those without any kind of permits or regulation, really, as long as you're not in populated areas with a gun.
Even when you are, you can still shoot with a bow as long as the locals are okay with you.
Right, with a bow, but with guns you do have to follow some gun laws and regulations, but we didn't bring any of ours. So there's some deer up north. They're much smaller than like a typical whitetail in the States. Lizards, there's lots of geckos, and then the larger ones, like
The monitors.
monitor lizards. I don't think there's really iguanas here. I haven't seen those.
No, just the geckos, really.
Yeah.
And your noisy toads.
Oh,
And
yeah.
our noisy toads
Yes.
behind the house.
Yes.
Lots of frogs and toads, especially during rainy season.
Yeah.
Oh, and crabs. I forgot about
Crabs.
that.
Oh.
There's coconut crabs and land crabs.
Yes. Our land crabs mimic moles.
Yes. They are the Guam version of a mole problem back in the States. Yeah. Holes everywhere.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
what's a coconut crab then?
Much larger. Yeah.
Very, very large crab, and they survive off of coconuts. A lot of the locals will go crab hunting. Typically at night, they'll be walking around the jungles with a flashlight, a net, or a bucket. Find some coconut crabs, stick them in the bucket, and let them thrive off of some coconuts for a few days to sweeten up the meat. So,
I think there's some stories because they are on the golf courses, and I've heard stories about them snapping a golf club in half.
yes, very easy.
They're pincers or whatever.
They're massive.
Yeah. So.
So how would you describe the traffic and the local drivers on the island?
They drive better than Ohio drivers
Chicago drivers.
or Chicago drivers. There are traffic laws as far as them being enforced. It's few and far between. The island speed limit is 35 miles an hour, which is why it still takes about an hour to go from south to north, even though the island is all of like 30 miles long. As far as the drivers go, you have good and bad ones.
I feel like they're they're not bad drivers. It's because nobody follows the laws of the road that it becomes more dangerous. They like to pass on the right instead of waiting for somebody to turn left or in any direction. If that person's waiting for cross traffic, they'll just start like passing on the right on a solid line. So if you're a bicyclist or a runner and you are coming that direction or something, you could easily be hit. And we've had people pass on the left while we're trying to turn left because they were impatient and didn't look at a blinker, because nobody here uses blinkers, which is also a danger.
Yeah, even when you do use a blinker, they still don't care.
Yeah.
So,
So tourism is huge on the island. Where do most of the tourists come from?
Probably Japan. I think they use this as a vacation island, kind of like the States uses Hawaii. So you'll see now that COVID's pretty much winding down and everything's opening up, we've seen a huge influx of tourists coming in. So
yep.
Yeah, Japan just opened up in October to tourism there.
Mm-hmm.
So we were really fortunate flying into Japan because we didn't, I mean, first of all, they allowed us in,
right.
even to change planes, but a lot of people don't realize that.
We just had the midterms in November, and I'm curious, what's the procedure for voting for military personnel?
You'd have to do a mail-in ballot. There's usually during the voting season or when different elections are going on, we'll get emails at work that kind of tell you if you need assistance on how to do things. They give us point of contacts or instructions, and then you can also look it up on your home state's government website to see instructions on how to obtain a mail-in ballot and dates due by and all that stuff. But everything's
that's the same for Jeff, even though he's not in the military, being a spouse.
I believe so, yeah.
I could technically request a mail-in ballot.
Yeah, because he's a dependent on my orders.
So let's talk a little bit about the Guam government. Guam citizens or natives, the Chamorros, they are considered American citizens. What rights do they have in terms of voting? Can they vote for instance, President of the United States?
No, so because it's a U.S. territory, they have all of the same freedoms, protections, and whatnot that U.S. citizens enjoy. But as far as voting goes, they can vote for their local government. The highest personnel that we have here in Guam is primarily the governor, but we also have a senator as well that represents Guam. But as far as president goes, they don't get the option to vote.
My understanding is that the senator from Guam does not have a vote.
Correct.
In the Senate, so he's more of a representative of Guam.
Yes.
So, now, if a native of Guam moves to the United States and lives in North Carolina, can they then vote for president?
I think they have to get, not necessarily citizenship, but just like if you move to another state, you have to become a resident of that state. And I've been told that if you move away from Guam and obtain residency elsewhere, I think it's difficult to come back. Or do they let them do dual? I'm not sure how that works for them, but some people do. They'll move away and then come back. But as far as the logistics of it, I'm not 100% sure.
I understand that there's not a lot of violent crime on the island, but what's been your experience, if any, with crime?
There's
Especially
lots
since
of
you
crime.
work in an ER.
Yeah, so there's lots of crime. It's just not. We probably don't have as many shootings as you hear about in the States, just because we don't have we're not as big of a place, but they still happen. We've had patients come into our ER that were shot with arrows instead of bullets. And then lots of petty crime. Break-ins, car break-ins is probably one of the biggest ones, especially if you're a hiker and you leave your vehicle, parked at one of the side of the road parking spots for a hike. A lot of people will, basically you don't leave anything valuable in your vehicle. They'll leave it unlocked so they don't break the windows, and some people will even put like a $20 bill folded up in the door handle as basically paying them to not damage their vehicle. It's it's interesting.
Or they'll leave it in the driver's seat with a note, essentially asking someone to not break their window.
Yeah. So there's lots of petty crime. We were actually broken into while we were home. We were asleep and somebody hopped our fence because our house has a like a concrete wall.
Perimeter fence.
Yeah, privacy wall with an electric gate, and they hopped it while we were sleeping. Thankfully, our vehicles were not locked because they would have probably busted things, and stole several items out of the vehicle, which we were able to get the important stuff back. We lost all the credit cards and stuff, but I got my driver's license back and some expensive sunglasses, things like that. But the cops were able to find them. We did a little bit of footwork before we called them because I had credit card alerts on my email for fraud. But by the end of the same day, they had found the people who got our stuff, and then the court system has been calling us with updates on like their trial status and things like that. But yeah, it's been interesting. We definitely recommend getting a house sitter if you own a house and you plan on going vacation, because you want somebody around your property.
Yes. We've had some friends that went to...
They went to Plow, didn't they? Or did they go... Manila, yeah.
Went on vacation for 3 to 4 weeks. Asked their neighbors to kind of keep an eye out, and came home to an empty house. So, come to find out afterwards that the neighbors unintentionally helped the thieves move their stuff out of their house.
Yeah.
And then later put the pieces together and call the cops.
Yeah.
Crazy, huh?
Share a little bit about the native population. How would you describe the Chamorro people, their culture, those who are native to Guam?
My experience with the native people, they're very welcoming. They love their food. Everything that they do centers around food and family.
Yeah.
We were unfortunate. We got here during COVID. So the normal neighborhood festivals and house gatherings were kind of all shut down due to the pandemic. But we've gotten a small piece of it now that things have opened up. As far as their culture goes, they're very rooted in their past. Much like the Hawaiian culture, it's very tribal. Centers all around ocean themes, spirits. What else?
I mean, everything I was thinking you pretty much already said. They're very family oriented, respect your elders, very welcoming with even like the military population or outsiders that get moved here and transplanted. They kind of pull you in. As long as you are, a nice human being and respectful, then they welcome you in.
So talk a little bit about what their food is like. You mentioned that's a big part of their culture.
A lot of barbecue. Very different than what we consider barbecue. They smoke a lot of their meats. chicken, beef, pork. They do a lot of seafood, tuna, ahi, salmon if they can get it.
There's a lot of local fish
A lot
too.
of local fish.
Yeah, I don't even know all the names, but you'll see it in the grocery store. Same fish that we see when we're diving.
Yes.
So, yeah.
There's a lot of spear fishing, a lot of fishing charters.